You're listening to Car Free Midwest.
We're a podcast based in Omaha, Nebraska, exploring the stories, barriers, and joys of getting around without a car.
Our goal is to build a community around more transportation equity and less car dependency.
I'm Sarah Johnson.
And I'm Joshua LeBure. And this is Car Free
Midwest.
Mid-South.
So, yeah, we're talking with Cindy Tefft today. Who are you, Cindy?
Hi. Well, thanks for having me. I'm Cindy, and I live in a very highly industrial commercial area. And I am a transportation advocate. So basically, I drive my car once in a great while. I also walk a lot, and I kind of bike as much as possible. And I use transit to go downtown because I hate driving downtown. But anyway, I have a nonprofit called the Blue Bucket Project. And before that even started, I picked up litter at one of the major intersections here in town, 72nd and Dodge Street area, from 72nd to 77th. So about a 5-block area. And started doing that. So I walked a lot, and then founded the nonprofit, the Blue Bucket Project, which is a litter pickup starter kit that we give away.
I've seen, actually, it's so funny. I've had a few conversations with some of my neighbors because I've seen people out with the Blue Bucket picking up litter. So I don't live right in your neck of the woods, but the reach that you have had is so widespread and so exciting. And yeah, just thank you for your work on all that, because it's really been awesome to watch it kind of turn into what it's become, which is certainly a force. I mean, I personally, I'm not doing a lot of walking due to my hip these days, but I sure do admire what I'm seeing on the interwebs. And it looks like you kind of are all over town. Is that right? You don't really focus on one area. It's just kind of wherever the need is, or how do you decide where to go?
So I need to also add that we do flash trash mobs. And so flash trash mobs we do just about weekly on a Saturday morning. It's 60 minutes only. And people just really love the 60-minute time frame because you go in, do the work, get out. You're not like lingering. And so it's just freaking amazing how much litter we can pick up in 60 minutes, especially if you have a group of 15 or 20 people. So we choose areas by nomination. Sometimes I'll see something and it drives me crazy, like 72nd and Maple. And often transit stops look pretty bad. So sometimes we just pick areas like that. We're doing World Cleanup Day, and we're going to go to Southside Terrace and have a great big huge flash trash mob there and invite the neighborhood. So basically we go in and give areas a boost, and then we hope that the neighborhood will continue to keep that area clean. Sometimes everyone is just overwhelmed with the amount of litter and trash. So when we go in, we try to give them that boost, and then they can pick it up from there. And I'm so excited because we have little kid grabbers, and kids love to pick up litter. Oh my gosh, it's really fun.
That's awesome. One of the things that I have noticed is, yes, aesthetically, how much better sidewalks look and how much better areas look once you're in there. But also some of it comes to like almost functionality. I mean, I've seen areas that you have treated where like the sidewalks are destroyed with, like, aside from, tree roots buckling the concrete, that's another conversation. But you really just improve the functionality sometimes too when it's not so cluttered with trash. It's just impactful in a lot of ways. So I'm excited to see all of the before and after pictures. It's really impactful. Another thing I was kind of wondering about, since you are kind of in different areas of town, and since this is sidewalk stories, I'm wondering, have you noticed much of a difference in overall sidewalk conditions from one part of town to the other?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It also depends on if there's businesses or houses in the area. We usually do intersections. We try, and sometimes parks. But we try to do areas that are a little edgy sometimes. And so, for instance, I'm going to use the 72nd and Maple example. But when I went to check out the area, there were tree branches actually growing into the sidewalk. So I happened to have some snippers along with me. I was on my bike, so I hopped off and snipped off the branches and then went on my way. So so we're running into problems when we do trash or litter removal on flash trash mobs with not only trees in the way, oftentimes grass grows into the sidewalks. And then also there's just debris like glass, sand, salt. And, I have delivered blue bucket kits all over town. And once you get past 90th Street, it's like a whole new ball game, except for several areas, like off of 120th and Blondo, and then 84th and Center. Every now and then you'll find areas where the sidewalks are just really miserable. And I'm just going to keep talking because every time I see sidewalks where chunks of concrete are missing, I think of my friends who use wheels. And sometimes I ride my bike on the sidewalk. I try not to, but like 84th and Center, I do. And all the ADA ramps are missing or they're gouged out. And then there's also chunks of concrete missing. So it would be totally impassable for any of our friends who use wheeled devices. So wheelchair users.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been gratefully able to talk with a few different folks who use mobility aids, and it's just, it's devastating to their daily existence. And it's just, that's part of our goal with these sidewalk stories is to really highlight the humanity of transportation and encourage our elected officials to understand the importance of sidewalks as transportation. So I guess the words that just jumped out at me as you said, when you get past 90th, it's like a whole, maybe you said a different ballgame. The words, I guess, didn't stick, but the sentiment did. It changes once you go west of 90th. Can you kind of explain what you mean by that?
The sidewalk infrastructure is different. And even further west. So for instance, like I was along Pacific Street. Well, there's like hardly any curb between like say 60th and at least 90th. And then there starts to be a little bit of a grassy area. And then once you get out to 130th, then all of a sudden there's this great big huge wide pathway, but nobody's using it. And it's just, I just go, oh my gosh, I wish that huge wide pathway was east of 90th Street where people would use it and really need it desperately. So
perfect. That's what I was looking for, because part of this project is to kind of showcase that different parts of town get treated differently. And unfortunately, infrastructure is part of that story. It's not the same city, north, south, east, and west. So right. I'm happy for that anecdote. The other reason that we wanted to have you on is because of the good work that you have done with crosswalks and specifically stop lines. 72nd and Dodge, for those of you listening who don't know, is pretty much the center of the city. I believe it's referred to as like the heart or soul of the city. There's a lot of new development happening right there right now. It's Dodge is our only rapid transit bus line. So it's 72nd and Dodge is a big intersection. And Cindy, you have put in years of effort to try to get the city to take pedestrian safety seriously there. Can you kind of run us through what some of that looked like?
Yes.
Again, whatever you're comfortable. Yeah. Share what you want. What you want.
I also belong to Mode Shift Omaha. I forgot about that. So like I said, I'm a huge transportation advocate, but 72nd and Dodge, I use a lot, and I use it even more now because of Orbit. But back in 2015, I started asking for crosswalks, and they said they weren't warranted. The city said they weren't warranted. And then in 16, they said that they would do a count. Actually got them at a town hall meeting to agree to another count, even though the count wasn't due for another year. So they did the count, and they said they were going to do the count in April when school was going on, when the weather was nice, and they were going to do 2 days of counting. Well, it turns out that the day they actually counted was July 6th, and they only counted 1 day, and then they just multiplied approximate what the end result would be. So I actually told them, I said, I'm going to put in a crosswalk myself. And they said, well, if you put in a crosswalk yourself, you will be liable for any accidents that would happen in that crosswalk. I also found out that the lines in crosswalks are way longer than we think they are. I thought they were 6 feet long, but I think they're like 10 feet long. But some friends of mine had templates, and I was thinking about actually borrowing their templates to paint. I was just going to paint white. I mean, what the heck? But the city said, nope, don't do it. If you do. And so I was really persistent. I mean, I just kept on them. And so in 2017, they finally put in stop lines. And the reason they put in stop lines and not a crosswalk is because they said that, I see Josh shaking his head. So the reason they put in the stop lines instead of the crosswalk was they said it delineates where cars are to stop, and then it leaves a designated area for pedestrians. So that designated area for pedestrians is very ambiguous, right? Okay. So
this drives me crazy. This drives me crazy.
Sorry, and I was really happy actually to get the stop lines, and it did make a difference because I had so many freaking pictures of people pulling way far into the intersection. And then lo and behold, because Orbit, our rapid transit, came to be, and then Crossroads is being redeveloped. Also Do Space, I believe, added some input. I was walking the area in 2021, and I almost started crying because lo and behold, they were painting. I actually walked by when they were painting the crosswalks, and I'm not kidding you. I almost cried because I was so happy.
Yeah, that's a huge impact. It's a huge impact. I want to continue to tell you how awesome that is. I would have been crying with you.
What's really nice to hear is because the reason why I was shaking my head so much is because as soon as you said, that you were, quote unquote, threatening to paint crosswalks, then they put in the stop lines, and I'm like, I do think that that's like a great move forward, but it almost seems like a lot of what this city does is to try to do the bare minimum to just spite the activists who are trying to do stuff. Like, it feels spiteful to me. That's like what it almost just kind of felt like a middle finger to the work that you guys were trying to do.
I understand your thought process on that. To me, it was, I was asking for cake and they gave me a little teeny tiny biscuit.
Of course. And it's a win. Like, it's a win.
Right,
don't get me wrong.
Right.
But at the same time, it's almost like, let's like placate people a little bit, but not do enough to where they feel like they really won.
Right. So the things I heard the most from the city were liability, warrants, things aren't warranted. And so my deal is that they follow the MUTCD, the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. They use that when they want to as a Bible. And if they don't want to use it, they just use it as a guideline. And so what I have found with the city here is that they really manipulate how they use the MUTCD.
Absolutely. I think another conversation that I know you and I have had, and we've had with the city or, heard from the city, that they are reactionary, which is unfortunate. And part of our goal with the sidewalk stories is to get them to be a little bit more proactive when it comes to taking care of sidewalk infrastructure. But I don't know. I guess I do just want to really reiterate how awesome it is that you had that perseverance and you went through literal years of effort, and then they finally did a little bit. And you've seen how impactful it is as far as just actual safety. The whole cake, you asked for cake. No, I don't think so. I think we're begging for basics. These are just actual bottom line safety measures that for some reason are not part of the city's budget. I know a lot of times, they talk about, it's not warranted. It's because they don't decide that has value to them. When you look at the city budget, for example, we talk about how budgets are values documents, and it shows what the city cares about. And unfortunately, if there aren't people like Cindy and folks with Mode Shift and other activists, activists, I try to combine those words. Stuff doesn't seem to get done. So I do just want to say, yes, the city has even acknowledged themselves that they are reactionary, which is unfortunate. But I don't know. I just can't say thank you enough for all of the literal years of work you've put into one intersection, which we really are seeing it's a lot better than it was before you got involved.
Yeah, it is better. So thank you very much, Sarah. One of the things about the reactionary and type of thing, I think a lot of people don't understand that our city is reactionary. And I would so love to see the city with grids and have people in charge of the grids and really go around and just actually check on things. But the way it works right now is you have to call in. And so I'm going to give you another example. So Dodge Street is the state highway. It goes through the heart of the city. So between 74th and 76th, a new building was being built. And they actually went into the right of way of the state highway and did not put up barricades, did not put up anything. And there was a drop off where you could fall in, or you could drive into or walk into a puddle of water. And it was probably about 25 or feet or longer. So I was walking there one day and I thought, holy cow, somebody's going to fall in. And lo and behold, I looked up and there was a woman walking on the street towards me because there was no sidewalk, there was no barrier. And I was just horrified. And I talked to her and I said, I'm so sorry you had to walk in the street. And she goes, oh, yeah, you know. And some people just, they don't call, they don't report because it's just beyond their capacity, or they would be doing it so constantly that it just becomes overwhelming. So I really super wish our city could kind of step it up a little bit. The other thing I'm hearing a lot these days is, well, we're understaffed. We're understaffed. We're understaffed. And so that's the main excuse right at the moment.
Interesting.
I'm curious, you know, I want to ask both of you this question because it's like one I don't actually know the answer to because, you know, I haven't lived here that long. But how much of like the work in the advocacy community is kind of focused on pressuring some of these companies with like infrastructure around to like push the city to do things? Because it sounds like, I mean, with like Crossroads, with like, you know, Mutual of Omaha, you know, there's a lot of power there, maybe more power in some of these big companies than even the city, and they'll actually listen to them.
That's a good point. I think that actually Cindy and I were a part of a conversation with the developers of the Crossroads corner, and they really did seem to listen. I mean, Cindy, you were involved in a lot more of those conversations than I was, but I remember the call that we were on, I think, together when we were talking about like, okay, you know, you're talking about parking, but you're not talking, I haven't seen anything about bike parking. Also, you're right next to the orbit line. I haven't seen like a nice transition from the corner where people, you know, your customers are going to be getting off the bus. Like, how are you inviting them into your development? And they were like, oh, we didn't think about that. And then they actually did make some changes. I mean, it's not done yet, you know, so I'll believe it. I'm the whole I'll believe it when I see it person, just because I'm cynical and skeptical at this point. But Cindy, do you want to talk a little bit about how that conversation went? Because I do think that you're right, Josh. Sometimes when it's bigger than just one organization or one person, when you get some bigger companies involved, it does seem to have a different tone. Do you agree, Cindy?
I do agree. And that was a really impactful to me piece of work that we did because they met with us separately several times. And then they also met with the B-Cycle group, Benny from B-Cycle or Heartland B-Cycle. So I really felt that they made an effort. And I do want to also mention that Do Space, I think, also probably stepped up their game a little bit about crosswalks because people getting off of transit and going to use their area needed better crossings at 72nd and Dodge. As far as like businesses, one of the things that I think we've noticed with the new developments is when they build something new, the sidewalks are now, I don't know the exact background of this, Sarah. You probably know it better than me, but they're building the sidewalk setback. There's a setback. They're planting trees. The sidewalks are wider. But one of the things is that's really hit and miss. So if there's like new banks being built along the street, yay, we have nice sidewalks and trees. Or, you know, even like in Dundee along Dodge Street, there's better sidewalks on one side of the street than the other just because of new development. But I think that's a valid point, Josh, as far as like asking companies and businesses to kind of step it up a little bit. I'm going to do that. I know this isn't about biking necessarily, but I'm going to do that with biking because the trail system has been really let go and run down. And so I'm thinking about talking to the Southwest Precinct crime prevention specialist is concerned about safety on the trails. Well, that would be a walking thing too, because she jogs. But so I'm thinking about talking to Trek, talking to maybe some of the other businesses that are bike oriented and seeing if they will help put some money forward, because that is one area the city said they're running out of money on. We just don't have the money. So, it's a transportation system. And I always reiterate that when I talk to the city, it's not just for recreation, it's a transportation system. And yeah.
Awesome. That's absolutely exciting to hear that. I mean, you just don't stop, Cindy. You're amazing.
Right.
I'm
just like imagining like if we could talk all these companies into like, if you can make it more accessible to go to each other, I don't know. Mm-hmm. When you said that, it just sparked that thought. So yeah, that's cool to hear.
Well,
that, things are happening because I genuinely had no idea. So.
Well, there are two businesses along the Big Papio Trail system that did put in their own access to the trail. One is a a brewery, and another is a workout place. And it's just awesome that they both have access to the trail system. But I also feel that
I saw Sarah and Eric out there putting in the bike when I was out on a bike ride one time.
The Fix-It station.
Yeah, the Fix-It station. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Pat, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I also feel though that the city needs to step it up. The city really needs to budget for this. CIT.
Yes.
I mean, if Mutual of Omaha can make the city essentially put in like a silly tram system, these companies should be able to like pressure the city into like doing some of the basic transportation stuff.
I was just thinking, Cindy, something else that you and I have done together is go up and down Dodge Street and hand out those sidewalk assessments and talk to business owners now that we're kind of on that train of thought with like, how can we leverage bigger, companies rather than just like single activists. And do you want to talk a little bit about the sidewalk assessment tool that we were handing out and just kind of the conversations we were having along Dodge Street?
Yeah, right. For Mode Shift, we did a sidewalk assessment along Dodge Street. And so Sarah and I took a section and we walked up and down and I printed out, people could go online and find the information, but we actually handed out copies so people could look at it and read. And I think that it really brought an awareness because sometimes people just are not aware. One of the things that I found very interesting, and I'm not sure if it was part of the area you and I did, Sarah, but I went into Wolf Brothers and they weren't even aware that they had a sidewalk out front that they were responsible for. They thought it was someplace entirely different. And while I'm on that tact, I do have to add that that whole area has been renovated and they took out the old sidewalk, put in a new one, and it's absolutely beautiful. But anyway, so yeah, talking to people and businesses and bringing awareness is really a huge part of advocacy for using sidewalks for walking and or if you have to bike on them.
I think it really is just an afterthought for so many people, whether it's business owners or policymakers. And that's, again, not to sound like a broken record, but the concept with the sidewalk stories is to really just help raise awareness and have more folks talking about sidewalks, something that a lot of people just don't even really, think about. A lot of these conversations that we've had, people are like, oh yeah, I guess, I don't really think specifically about sidewalks every day, but they do impact me every day. And so I think just, that awareness piece is really something that we're trying to elevate with these conversations. Another thing I wanted to ask you, Cindy, I mean, you touched on it a little bit about how the city really needs to up its game when it comes to taking care of this infrastructure. But if you could talk to decision makers one-on-one, because we are hoping to share some of these conversations with the city council, maybe even state legislators, the mayor's office, we're going to try to get it around to decision makers where we can. So if you had their ear, what would you ask them for or say to them?
I would just, I want them to walk with me. I want them to experience it. And then I would ask them to really make sure that they're going to fund sidewalks so that people are able to use the sidewalks in the manner in which they're made.
Pretty much every sentence that comes out of your mouth, I'm like, oh yeah, there's another cool thing that you did. And it, this one again was Mode Shift, I think was kind of part of the spearhead, but you were certainly doing it as well. And I think maybe even came up with the whole walk with me concept. But we, as Mode Shift, had asked different decision makers and elected officials to walk with us. I'm just wondering if you have any kind of takeaways from any of those walks that you were a part of. Did it really seem like anyone was getting it? Like I know we did some walks with like candidates during the election cycle last year, but can you talk a little bit about if you saw anything impactful come from any of those?
Not really, because I don't think we really had, it was mostly candidates, people who were running for office. We did have one of the current city council people walk with us when we were looking at a Verizon pole that was plopped in the middle of a sidewalk. And that was kind of an interesting experience, but he also lives in an area where, it's kind of familiar for him. So I think I would really love to have the city council people or even city public works come and walk and just see what it feels like. One thing I wanted to bring up is that, like, for instance, along Dodge Street in certain areas, the setback is only about 18 inches. And then that's a red molded, crappy looking, supposedly concrete stuff that comes apart during the wintertime. And quite frequently, that area is the area that the snow plows plow or the business owners plow. And so you're very close to traffic then. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the noise and the stress. If people walked with us and they could understand what it feels like to have cars going by at in a 35 mile an hour zone and they're traveling by at about 55 or 60, what that feels like at 18 inches. And then also the sound. Another thing I would love to have people experience is, crossing the street and seeing how people who turn don't look, like right-hand turners don't look quite frequently. So I'm very, very cautious. And I had another thought there and I lost where I was going. I'm rambling.
That's perfect. We love the ramble. No, it's good. That's why you're here. Anything that comes to mind, just share. That's perfect. One thing that came to my mind. Oh, go ahead, Josh. But winter. At some point, I want to talk about winter and snow management or lack thereof. But go ahead.
Yeah, let's do that after. I did want to go back to kind of talking about like the debris and the pickups and stuff like that. And I'm kind of curious, I don't want to be like a hater. My father-in-law thinks that I'm crazy for thinking this, but I essentially think when it comes to like debris and like the bike trails and stuff like that, that like out of all the cities I've been to and experienced, that Omaha's are among the dirtiest as far as like trash and lack of maintenance. And I'm curious if I'm just like projecting or if that's like, do you think there's like some truth to that? And do you think that, there's a lack of care taken in those areas? I specifically live by the Field Club Trail, which is a really beautiful like little stretch, and it really could be, but there's just always just so much trash, and it seems like it's put on, organizations like yours or citizens to put together cleanups. I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
I absolutely agree that our trail system is not kept up like other cities. I have been to Des Moines, Iowa. Well, and I'll get started on signs because signs are an issue. We don't have signage. And where they are, it's very few and far between. But the other thing is, I was actually on the trail system. Okay, I have another group called the Trail Ninjas. And what we do is we go out, and I quite frequently have snippers. Sometimes I have spray paint in my pack. And so if there's like a big crack where you're going to hit a bump, I spray it with paint so people are aware of it. Snipping things so that we have a good line of sight or sight line. But I was on the trail system, and two women stopped and talked to me, and they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm just like trimming here and picking up a little bit of the litter." And they said, "Oh, well, we're just visiting from out of town." And one was from Arizona, one was from Utah. And they both said that they were just really appalled at the amount of litter and trash that was along our system. I do have to say there are many people that we don't even know that do go out and do some of the work. And I really want to give them a shout out because, it just takes a village to keep a village clean. And I love the way that some people just really chip in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to diminish like the work that, you guys are doing and the people are doing, because I see it and it's a beautiful thing. But, you really want, like, when you're paying taxes into a city, you would really like to see like some resources put into maintaining it. And it does feel like here more than other places that it's very much like, I think maybe it's because we keep annexing suburbs probably, and resources keep going into that over like maintaining the city core. But yeah, I mean, I definitely really appreciate the people that go out there and do that. And, I'm the type of person who, if I'm on a bike ride and I see, huge amounts of debris, I'll get off my bike and, move branches and move stuff, cause, I hate to see people crash.
Yeah, that's one thing I just want to continue to hammer home. Like, this is not necessarily like a beautification situation. It's a straight up safety issue. And I think that, like, even just Omaha has recognized, Vision Zero, those types of things. We're talking more and more about safety. The mayor continues to say public safety is her number one priority. So I'm hoping that some of these issues really she's aware of as safety issues and can budget accordingly around. And this is not some radical idea that doesn't exist elsewhere. Other cities do maintain their sidewalks. Go ahead, Cindy.
Right. So there are two really huge, actually three, trail safety issues in Omaha. The trail system actually does have markers that say where you are and what trail it is in the concrete, most places. However, most of those are covered up with weeds, so you can't see them. Another huge safety issue is, this just blows me away, but you go on an underpass and you look up and you have no idea what street it is. There's a couple of places in town. I still don't know the street name. I can look on a map and I'm just going like, I don't know what that street is. So I've talked to the city parks about it. And it's like, well, you get a trail map. We have these really nifty trail maps you could have. And I'm like,
that are old.
Yeah, they're old. Not everybody's
got
a trail map. There's actually a couple of mistakes on the map too. The other thing is that weeds and stuff growing into the trail system do like prevent line of sight.
What do you think about winter? It is still August for a few more days, but...
Well, my opinion's all over the board on that one, I think. I just end up reporting an awful lot. But our city, the way they have things set is that you don't have to clear your sidewalks until 24 hours after the city calls an end to the storm. So that could really super impact people who use transit, people who walk, or who do bike. And actually, sometimes the bike trail is cleared before sidewalks are. The trail transportation system is cleared fairly well. But as far as winter, I really get after businesses. I'll go inside and actually talk to them. But also the city needs to do a better job of corners, places where people have to cross the street. They actually have to walk up over a pile. So last year at 72nd and Dodge, all four corners had huge piles where people had to walk up over. And so I went and on my own did these cutouts so that people at least had a little tiny trail to walk through so that they could cross the street. It's a real problem. I think, it's something that we really need to address in our city.
Well, I mean, we are getting, we're about 45 minutes in. So, I mean, I think that the main things that we wanted to talk about, we really have, which is what would you say to elected officials? How do you feel about sidewalks elsewhere? The different parts of town being different as far as maintenance goes. And then how, winter could be better. So I think we've covered kind of a broad swath of issues in addition to like your Blue Bucket project and your involvement with Mode Shift and the Trail Ninjas. I mean, I knew this conversation was going to be fun, Cindy, because you're just doing so much and it's so impactful and it's all good. And you maintain a positive attitude. That's actually one thing I really want to commend you on, is because, that's not my strong suit. I get kind of cynical after all of these years, and you just maintain this like kind of slow and steady wins the race attitude. And I don't know, I just admire the heck out of you. And I'm glad that we had some time to chat about all of your sidewalk influences today. So that was a lot of words.
I do want to bring one thing up before we go, because I feel like with a lot of these conversations, we're talking about, when we're talking about infrastructure and like building these systems and like, it almost feels impossible. Like, oh, how could we ever like, have a system where every sidewalk is clean so people that are in wheelchairs, can get around, and people that need to walk around can get around. And, how can we really have a city with like these built bike infrastructures and stuff like that? And I'm like, we live in a country, in a city where like cities were built. We have infrastructure. We have huge infrastructure for cars. We put in traffic lights. We put in lanes all over. We have freeways that get all over the country. Like these things are possible. And it's just really a matter of like, changing the priorities. And I'm just so thankful for the work that, people like you are doing, Cindy, and that the work that you're doing, and the, and of course, like Sarah and stuff like that. Like, just, I think that just keeping these conversations going is just so important, because, we have the ability to really make these things happen if we put in, if we change the conversation and change the priorities and, keep it going.
Yeah, thank you. I lost you guys for a few minutes, so I don't know exactly where that conversation was going. But I do have to say that by this time of year, I start getting kind of tired of it, and I just want to go. And, and I actually have to forcefully say, do not stop and pull those weeds. Do not, so I have to tell you just one real quick story and ending, because they're out again, is the sandburrs along the trail. The trail system hasn't been mowed very well, especially since school started, and because they lost some of their employees, I'm sure. And so there's these sandburrs along the trail system. And last year I actually tried to weed eat them myself. And I realized you just don't really weed eat sandburrs. And I didn't do it very well. And I had all these sandburrs like stuck in my legs from through my jeans. At least I wore long pants. But so this time of year I start getting a little weary. But I really feel that, if people see what I'm doing and other people are doing, maybe then they will take it on themselves. One of the comments I get was, aren't you going to get in trouble for doing that? And I say, absolutely not. Are you kidding me? The city's not going to scold me for pulling weeds or trimming some trees that are slapping me in the face when I ride by or walk by. So, so there you have it.
Awesome. Yeah. You are a force for good. Yeah.
How do you keep it up? How do you keep doing it? Like, what's your secret? I mean, I know you told yourself to keep doing it, but I mean, like, how do you keep the hope alive?
I follow a Buddhist philosophy. I want to be the change. If I'm gonna talk the talk, I need to walk the walk, or vice versa. If I'm gonna walk the walk, I need to talk the talk.
And that does it for this episode of Car Free Midwest.
We're here almost every other week with interviews, topics, and documentary pieces covering all things transportation.
You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Car Free Midwest, or visit us at carfreemidwest.com.
So subscribe now to Car Free Midwest wherever you listen to podcasts, and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/carfreemidwest.
This podcast has been produced by me, Joshua LeBure,
with support from Mode Shift Omaha, modeshiftomaha.org.
And this is our sign-off.
Good day. It is kind of a good day.
You can't tell me what to do.